Episode 101, Sound Asleep. After lunch, Haley announced that it was time to watch a movie. Let's watch that new adventure, she suggested as she held Brad 2.0's arm. She dragged him, Owen, and Leo to sit with her. As soon as the movie started, Haley's attention turned to the screen. Everything around her, including her motionless husband beside her, faded away. With her attention on the movie, Owen decided that it was a good time to slip away. He quietly signaled to Leo to follow him. He knew better than anyone how crazy his normally sweet sister got whenever she watched a movie. She fully immersed herself in the story, and her reactions got a bit wild. For that reason, he had been trying to get out of her movie invitations. The boys reached the door. They silently opened it and stepped out, but before Owen closed it, he glanced back at the man he had left behind. Sorry to abandon you to my sister. She's about to go crazy. Please don't get angry at her, he whispered and closed the door. Haley was still focused on the movie. As the story progressed, she grew wilder, and her grasp on Brad's arm tightened. At one point, the main character did something that disappointed her, and she pulled Brad's arm so forcefully that she almost dislocated his shoulder. He showed no reaction to either the movie or the pain in his arm. He was focused only on her. The movie ended, but she still needed to buy more time. She needed it to get dark outside so that she could execute her plan, which was to kidnap Brad, blindfold him, and take him to one of her favorite places. She was sure that he would like it, but it would be more romantic at night, and because she wanted to surprise him, she had to give him the impression that all she wanted to do was stay in and binge movies. To stall for time, she chose another movie, a physics documentary. It interested her, and she felt like she was learning something new. But because there weren't any thrilling action scenes, her reactions were more muted than they had been during the adventure movie. Her mind wandered. She thought back to their first date in the amusement park, and how she had messed it up. Then she remembered their second date, and she cringed at the complete lack of romance. Rather than being discouraged by those earlier disappointments, she was determined to succeed on the third attempt. It'll work this time. You can do it, girl, she encouraged herself. Just as her attention was returning to the documentary, she felt something heavy fall onto her shoulder. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Brad's head resting on her. Huh? He fell asleep, she thought. Haley sighed, but when she heard his soft, slow breathing, she covered her mouth. He really was sound asleep. Did he have trouble sleeping last night? Do I toss and turn too much? Wait, he wasn't in bed when I woke up. Did he get up early to work? She wondered. Worried about his lack of sleep the previous night, she stayed still so that she wouldn't wake him. She watched the rest of the documentary in silence and then slowly turned to look at him. As she turned her head, his soft hair brushed against her cheek. She felt warm and cozy, and she decided that she liked feeling her husband's head on her shoulder. Episode 102. Fallen asleep. Episode 102. Get in the car. When Brad woke up, his eyes widened in disbelief. He couldn't believe that he had fallen asleep on his wife's shoulder. He slowly raised his head and looked at her. He was surprised to see that her eyes were closed, and her head was about to fall forward. He caught her face in his hands and gazed at her before gently placing her head on his shoulder. He remained silent. Her head felt like a soft, warm pillow on his shoulder, and she had a faintly alluring smell. He felt an urge to embrace her. After a few minutes, she opened her eyes. She blinked several times and gasped when she realized that she was resting on his shoulder. She gasped again and jumped up as though something had startled her. Wait, what? I fell asleep on his shoulder too? Seriously? Wait, what time is it? She thought. She looked out the window, and when she saw that it was already dark, her jaw dropped. Oh no, she shouted, alarming Brad. What's wrong? He asked as he stood up. I'm sorry, but you need to come with me right now, she replied with a panicked look before grabbing his wrist and dragging him out of the house. Brad was puzzled, but he kept up with her quick pace without asking where they were going. They reached their destination, where a black car was waiting for them. Haley flashed a smile at Brad before pushing him into the car. She got in after him. He knitted his brow when he saw her produce the red blindfold that he had given her when they had first met. His confusion made Haley smile. I'm sorry, but you've just been kidnapped, she said mischievously as she moved closer to him. She kneeled on the floor in front of him and took his face in her hands. Your kidnapper doesn't want to hurt you, so she needs to blindfold you, okay? She asked gently without letting go of his face. His ears tingled and she gazed into her eyes. Sure, you're an excellent kidnapper, he murmured. His sexy voice and breathtaking eyes made her flush. Focus, Haley. Don't get distracted, she told herself. She made him turn around so that she could tie the blindfold. She placed it over his eyes, but was interrupted by his phone ringing. She paused and backed away. Your excellent kidnapper will let you answer your phone first, she said with a smile. Brad lifted the blindfold from his eyes and stared at her for a moment before answering the call. "What is it?" he growled. And just like that, his long-lost cold aura was back, as if the innocently adorable man who had gotten into the car had frozen solid. Haley looked at him anxiously. Episode 103, Interrupted. Brad's grip on his phone tightened when he heard Tyler's voice, and his coldness filled the car. "Brad, sorry, but today's no good," Tyler said. Then, when Brad remained silent, he continued, "But don't worry, I'm sure she'll understand. You can always reschedule your date." Tyler had expected Brad's silence, and thought that he might not even be listening, but he still had more to say. He sighed before delivering what he knew would be the lethal blow that would prompt a response. "And don't forget that you're not the only one in danger anymore. She could get caught up in everything. You know what I'm talking about." With that, he hung up. Tyler's words hit Brad hard. He knew that Tyler wouldn't interrupt him unless the situation was dire. The thought of Haley being in danger jolted him awake, and he clenched his phone even more tightly. Haley sensed that something was wrong, but her own phone started ringing before she could ask. She saw that the call was coming from Mr. Clark. "Hi, Mr. Clark," she said. Miss Haley, I'm sorry, but there's a small problem, so..." he began. "Problem?" she interrupted, noticing how tense Brad was. "I'm sorry, but tonight," Mr. Clark continued. She didn't hear the rest of his sentence. Brad had reached for her phone, and when she saw the look on his face, she handed it to him. "I got your message. We're coming back," Brad grumbled and then hung up. The driver turned the car around. Brad stared silently out of the window for a moment and then turned to Haley, who was sitting nervously on the edge of the seat. "I'm sorry," he said, looking at her with pleading eyes. His words broke the tension, and Haley leaned back into the seat again. "It's okay," she said with a smile. "We can do it some other time." The shock of hearing him apologize had caught her off guard. It was the first time that she had heard him say he was sorry. So even though she was disappointed, she was also curious. Brad was relieved that she was okay with their sudden change of plans. He said as his coldness melted away. What she said next shocked him. "Can you tell me why we had to turn around?" she asked. He thought for a moment before replying. "It's not safe." Haley looked confused. "Not safe? What do you mean?" He didn't respond. He just gazed at her and gently caressed her head as an apology for not answering. His silence stung her. She knew that they could reschedule their date, but not knowing the reason it had been interrupted upset her. It was her turn to fall silent. She had known from the beginning that Brad would be a mystery to her, and that she wouldn't be allowed to find out who he really was. What she hadn't known was that eventually, the mystery would start to hurt her. Episode 104, Nothing to Worry About. They returned to Gray Mansion, and Brad went straight to his study without a word. Haley, who was still a bit crestfallen, headed toward their room. She leaned against the wall for a moment before running a hot bath. As she soaked in the tub, her mind wandered. A smile spread across her face as she remembered the first time she had set foot in the mansion. She'd felt scared, uncomfortable, and hopeless. But in the weeks that had followed, those feelings had eased. Brad had given her hope again. He had warmed her days, and she had started to dream again. She had found that just being near him made her happy. With those memories swirling in her mind, she felt recharged. Her resolve, which had started to waver, returned. She suspected that there would be new hurdles to overcome, but she wouldn't back down. Haley felt revitalized after her bath. She went downstairs to see when dinner would be ready, but on her way to the kitchen, she found Mr. Clark sitting quietly on the couch. She approached him and said, "Mr. Clark, can I ask you something?" He smiled at her. "Of course, Miss Haley. What is it?" "Brad said that we had to come back because it wasn't safe. Do you know what he meant?" she asked. Her question surprised him, and his smile faltered. He scratched his head as he responded hesitantly. I'm sorry. It's just a security thing. It's nothing to worry about." "A security thing? Is Brad in danger?" she asked. Mr. Clark fell silent and averted his gaze. He stammered. Seeing his expression, Haley guessed that she was right. Without another word, she went into the dining room, where she sat down and started gently banging her head on the table. "Brad, are you really in danger? Why?" she whispered. She was scared, and her heart was heavy. Tyler had quietly followed her, and after watching her bang her head against the table, decided it was time to tell her husband. He went into the dimly lit study and approached Brad, who was tapping on a keyboard with his eyes glued to the screen. "She's not disappointed, you know. She's worried about you." Tyler broke the cold silence, and Brad slowly turned to him, looking confused. Worried? He asked. You know how smart she is. When you said it wasn't safe, of course she figured out that you're in danger, his confidant added. Brad thought for a moment before replying. I don't want to lie to her. Yeah, but now she's really anxious, Tyler replied. Brad looked even more troubled. Tyler, amused by Brad's reaction, said, Just tell her not to worry. Episode 105. Determined to help. A cold silence filled the room, but it was quickly broken when Tyler noticed Brad's thumb. What happened? He asked mischievously as his curious gaze fell on the pink bandage wrapped around Brad's thumb. Brad slowly raised his hand and stared at his thumb. When he remembered what had happened, he turned red. Tyler couldn't believe his eyes. Oh my God, did he just blush? Or am I imagining things? He wondered. Shaking his head and rubbing his eyes, he turned on all the lights so he could see Brad better. When he saw the same bright red face, he nearly choked. Holy... he began, but then stopped himself. Oh my God, he's actually blushing, he thought. He was flabbergasted. He had never imagined that one day he would see such a cold man blushing over a cute pink bandage on his thumb. Shocked, but thoroughly amused, he grabbed his phone and took a picture. Brad remained speechless, staring at his thumb in a daze. Haley and Brad had a quiet dinner together. He looked up and noticed her staring intently at him, as though she wanted to say something. What's on your mind? He asked. She got up and stood in front of him, looking serious. Brad, can I be your bodyguard? She asked. He was visibly shocked, but he remained silent. She continued, I can learn how to do it. The teacher can come tomorrow morning. Brad still didn't say anything, so she kept talking. You might not believe me, but I'm pretty strong, and with more lessons, I'll just get stronger. I'll learn how to take on 5-minute ones. Her eyes blazed with determination. Brad was surprised, but also amazed. Even though he already knew how brave and strong she was, he hadn't seen such zealous determination before. So, this is what she's like when she's worried about me, he thought. He couldn't help smiling as a feeling of warmth spread through him. Her concern for him made him happy. You don't have to, and I won't let you. I have plenty of men for that. I agreed to get you a teacher so you could learn how to protect yourself when I'm not around. Remember? He said softly, still smiling. He caressed her head gently, as though she were his most precious treasure. He didn't know the effect that his smile had on her. She was dumbfounded, and she barely heard his words. Her eyes widened, and she covered her mouth in shock as she stared at the beautiful lips that were smiling at her for the first time ever. Episode 106. First time in a decade. When Brad saw her expression, his smile faded. He was about to speak when she put her hands on his cheeks. Smile again, please, she begged, looking as excited as a parent whose baby had just smiled for the first time. When he didn't respond, she started gently peaching his cheeks. Please do it again, she pleaded, gazing at him with twinkling eyes. He remained speechless and confused, unaware that he had just smiled. Please, she cried. He didn't have a chance to reply because Mr. Clark had appeared. I'm really sorry, Miss Haley, but he needs to take this call, he said as he handed Brad a cell phone. Like a child who had just been scolded by a strict parent, Haley slowly let go of Brad's face, biting her lip as her excitement faded. Brad glanced at the phone, and when he saw who the caller was, he jumped up. He quickly patted her head before walking out, followed by Mr. Clark, leaving her alone in the dining room. When the sound of his footsteps had faded, Haley's shoulders drooped, and she banged her head against the table. She had thought she was used to his sudden departures, since they happened so frequently, but Mr. Clark's appearance had come at an unfortunate time. She still felt excited, though, despite her failure to get a second smile out of her husband. Just getting one smile gave her a sense of accomplishment that overpowered her disappointment, and the image of his beautiful smile, which was burned into her brain, delighted her. He looked so cute. He was an adorable little beast. Wait, did he smile because he was happy when I told him I wanted to be his bodyguard? She wondered. Later that night, Brad was at his computer again when Tyler, who was sitting right behind him, broke the silence. Do you realize that you actually smiled at her? He asked. The question got Brad's attention. He turned toward Tyler, remembering what had happened a few hours earlier. Ah, so that's why she was asking me to smile again, he said, turning away again and staring out at the moon. That's it? That's all you can say? Do you know that was your first smile in a decade? I repeat, a decade? Tyler prodded his boss, hoping for a reaction. Brad remained silent. He was lost in thought, as though he hadn't heard. But as usual, Tyler was persistent. And seriously, even now, you're blushing, he continued. I can't believe it. First you blush over a cute little pink bandage, then you smile, and then you blush when I tell you that you smiled. Unbelievable. Brad, still staring at the moon, finally responded. Tyler, what do you think is going on with me? Was the response. Choice. Brad repeated his question. What do you think is going on with me? Tyler stammered. Are you seriously asking me that? You still haven't figured it out? All these things, you know I've never experienced them before, Brad said. His confidant replied, Hey, I know you've only recently become human, but why are you so unresponsive? This is why I told you to at least read some romance books and watch a few movies. Remember when we found that abandoned bookstore 7 years ago? I picked up some books there. But do you remember what happened? You beat me up and threw them away. And now you're asking me what's happening? Great. Are you saying that those books can explain what's happening to me? Brad asked. A mischievously evil smile spread across Tyler's face. He sidled toward his boss and reached out his hand. Give me your phone, he said. Brad shot him a glare, but then gave in and handed his phone over. Don't worry, I'm not going to mess up your phone. You just need to read these stories. I'll get you the really popular ones, okay? Read this. Tyler instructed as he handed the phone back, stifling his laughter. Brad saw that he had installed a romance novel app and left a novel open on the screen. His assigned novel was called Falling in Love Hard. He stared blankly at the screen for a few seconds and then started reading, not noticing that Tyler was recording him. Almost immediately, Brad's cold aura flared to life, and his coldness filled the room. Tyler, who had been eagerly awaiting his reaction, froze when he saw that it was the exact opposite of what he had expected. Huh? What's wrong with him? He thought, moving closer to ask his boss what the problem was. He stopped when Brad flashed him an icy glare. You've read this, right? And you think it'll help me? Yeah, I read some of them that time we got stranded. It's been a while, Tyler replied. You haven't given me a chance to read since then, he added to himself. And you dare to suggest that it can explain my feelings? Brad asked. Huh? What's wrong with it? You haven't even gotten past the first paragraph. You have to keep going. Brad cut him off. Shut up and leave. He glared again and deleted the app. Tyler backed out of the room, speechless. What the hell just happened? He wondered. He opened the app on his own phone, found the story, and read the first few sentences. Stop, let go of me. That's my... Stop, get off me, she pleaded, but the man ignored her, ripping her shirt open. Tyler dropped his phone, not knowing if he should laugh or cry. Seriously, there are hundreds of novels to choose from, and I picked that one, he thought. He felt like he had just exposed an innocent minor to a violent, non-consensual sex scene. Episode 108, If Looks Could Kill. The next morning, Haley woke up early. Brad hadn't come to bed, so she figured that the call he had received the previous night must have been so important that he had spent the whole night working in his study. The thought worried her. However, when she saw him sitting on the couch, she smiled. Good morning, she said. The voice that replied was unfamiliar. Good morning, Miss Haley, it replied, and then a tall man crossed the room and stood behind the couch. This is Leonard. He'll teach you Taekwondo, Brad said. Haley was taken aback. Huh? But he's kind of... She caught herself and finished the thought in her head. He looks kind of weak. She had been expecting someone like her high school coaches, who all looked tough. The man standing in front of her looked fragile, and he was so elegant that she imagined a lot of women would envy him, especially those lashes. And if he grows out his hair, he'll be prettier than a lot of the women around here, she thought. The longer she looked at him, the more she wondered if he was actually a man. His facial features seemed feminine. She turned to Brad. Is he really a... She started to ask, but then stopped herself. Shut up! Don't be rude! She scolded herself. Leonard walked toward her, extending his hand. I assure you, Miss Haley, that I am in fact a... He paused as though searching for the right words. A real man, he said. Haley reached out to shake his hand, but he pulled it back just before they made contact. Excuse me. I need to use the restroom. With that, he hurried out of the room. He went straight to the dining room, where he recognized Tyler, sipping a coffee at the table. Approaching the table, he cried, Tyler, Why didn't you tell me anything? You should have at least told me how fond he is of her. I was just about to shake hands with her when that icy glare almost killed me." He sounded like a child describing a near escape from a serious punishment. Tyler glanced up at him nonchalantly and then flashed a mischievous smile. "Think about it. Would he ask you, of all people, to teach just anybody?" he asked. Leonard fell silent, realizing that the young lady he had just met must be incredibly important and special to Brad. "I get it, but wait. So the fairy tale that Brat Jared was telling was actually true? Seriously? The boss is actually interested in someone romantically?" he asked, shocked. Tyler turned to him. "Why else would he want to spend so much time here?" Leonard was speechless for a moment, but then another thought occurred to him. He sat down next to Tyler. "It was weird that he didn't want me to shake hands with her. I had never thought of him as the jealous type." "He definitely is," Tyler confirmed. Leonard was speechless again. Episode 109, A Role Reversal. Haley and Leonard were in the courtyard, ready to start fighting. Leonard had told her that he wanted to see what her level was before starting their lessons. She hesitated. How can I take this beautiful, delicate man seriously, she thought. "This is serious, Miss Haley," he said. The stern expression on his face reminded her that she shouldn't judge him by his looks. They faced each other and the fight began. She soon realized that he was much tougher than he looked, and she felt silly for judging him by his appearance. Brad had chosen him to train her, so she figured that he had to be good. The longer they fought, the more she could see how skilled he was. They continued fighting for several minutes. He smiled gently as they circled each other. He had spent the whole time only defending himself, and she realized with frustration that not a single blow had reached him. She hadn't even come close. "You are very skilled, Miss Haley. If you're only training for self-defense, I would say you're already good enough. Why do you still want to learn more?" he asked casually when he saw her growing tired. "I'm not good enough. I want to be stronger," she replied, panting heavily. "Is there someone you want to beat in a fight?" he asked after a few more minutes. He could see that she was starting to get exhausted. "No, I want to protect someone," she replied. "Who? You have a little brother, right? Is someone bullying him?" he asked. "No, my husband is in danger, so I want to protect him," she said. "Huh? Your husband?" Leonard, remembering that she was talking about Brad, was momentarily dumbstruck, giving Haley an opportunity to land a blow on his face. She squealed in delight. The two men watching from behind a pillar reacted very differently to Haley's words. Tyler, as usual, struggled to contain his laughter, trembling with amusement but managing to stay quiet. Brad, on the other hand, was shocked and motionless. "Oh my God, did you hear that? Your wife is so cool," Tyler gasped, still trying to control himself. "What a role reversal. It looks like she's the strong one in your relationship. This is fun." He was clearly enjoying himself. Brad paid him no attention, focusing instead on the action in the courtyard. His cold aura blazed to life, catching Tyler by surprise. He turned to see what Brad was looking at, and he saw Haley gazing at Leonard with stars in her eyes. "You're so good. Do you have a 9th degree black belt?" "You do, don't you?" Haley asked in awe. She had never met anyone as talented as him. She waited for him to respond, unaware that the deadly look Brad was shooting him was silencing him. Episode 110. It all makes sense. Tyler, noticing how much Leonard was struggling under Brad's cold gaze, scratched his head. He knew that Leonard couldn't handle Brad's pressure and had nearly had a nervous breakdown because of him. "These guys are such a pain in the ass," he thought. He decided that it was time to act. He needed to make sure that Brad would choose Leonard as Haley's secret bodyguard. He racked his brain, and after just a few seconds, he had an idea. He glanced at Leonard, who was horror-struck, and sighed. "You're not going to like this, but it'll save you," he thought, wishing Leonard could hear his apology. He put his hand on Brad's shoulder and whispered something to him. As he had expected, his words extinguished Brad's icy fire. His coldness melted away. Brad approached Haley and Leonard. Haley, who had her back turned to him and didn't notice his presence, was still talking to her Taekwondo teacher. You're so talented. I bet if you teach Taekwondo in school, everyone will be amazed. You'll be famous and everyone will want to challenge you. And the girls will chase you, but don't let it go to your head. The captain of my high school team had a new girlfriend every day, and he turned into a jerk. Don't do that, she said. As she spoke, Leonard slowly regained his composure, having been released from Brad's glare. Before he could respond, though, Brad's voice called out. That definitely won't happen. He's not into women, he said. Haley and Leonard both froze and looked at Brad in shock. Haley knew that Brad wouldn't lie to her. She turned back to Leonard with curiosity in her eyes, and she saw again how beautiful he was. She giggled and then smiled at him. Of course, it makes perfect sense. I hope he doesn't think he has to hide it from me, she thought. Leonard's nerves were frayed. Where did that come from? He whispered to Brad, trying hard to hide his annoyance. Brad shrugged and glanced at Tyler without saying anything. Leonard understood. Nobody else would treat him like that. Damn you, Tyler. What are you doing to me? He wondered. Haley, misreading his expression, started trying to reassure him. It's fine, really. I'm really happy that I'm on your side, okay? She said, gently patting his back. Leonard, not wanting to be showered with attention, stepped away from her. Really, I need to use the restroom. Excuse me. He grabbed Tyler and dragged him into the house. Episode 111. End of the Ice Age. As soon as Tyler and Leonard had entered the living room, Leonard finally let out what he wanted to say. Tyler, what the hell? Why did you say that? He demanded angrily. What? I did it to protect you, replied Tyler, shrugging his shoulders. What? There were lots of other ways you could have done that. Are you serious? And now the boss and Miss Haley think I'm gay. I can't accept this. It's just too much, he said. Easy now. This is the only way you can stay by her side without being under any pressure from Brad. And besides, if I hadn't told him you were gay, there was no way he was going to let you guard her, Tyler explained. Tyler's words somehow calmed Leonard. However, the thought that both Brad and Haley now believed him to be gay didn't make him very happy. As if he had read his mind, Tyler said, You don't have to worry. I'll tell them to keep it a secret. What? Shut up. You don't know how I feel, he retorted. Leonard, listen, your job isn't very straightforward, so I have to do everything I can to avoid anything that could disrupt what I've planned, Tyler said, and his sudden change of tone silenced Leonard. He was aware that anything Tyler wanted to happen would definitely happen. He knew that Brad was the only person who could reverse any decision. So he already knew he was doomed the moment he had heard what Brad said to him in the garden. I know you already understand how important that woman is. You must protect her at all costs. It would be a huge problem if anything bad happened to her. And well, the truth is, I can't even begin to imagine what that monster would do if that were to happen. So don't ever think about slacking, okay? Tyler's voice was as serious as it had ever been, and the expression on his face matched his solemn tone. Leonard knew that every time Tyler behaved in this way, he meant business. Slacking? What makes you think I would ever neglect my duties? Leonard replied, which only caused a smirk to flash across Tyler's face. And that's why I chose you, didn't I? Let's go back outside. You still have things you need to teach her, right? Tyler said nonchalantly as he began to walk away, infuriating Leonard even more. I always do my job, but I will not forget this, Tyler, he said. Yeah, said Tyler over his shoulder. Meanwhile, outside, Brad and Haley were chatting. You seem very fond of him, Brad observed, and Haley nodded her head enthusiastically. Yeah, he's really amazing. I didn't think you would hire such a great teacher for me. He's so talented, but I'm so looking forward to the day I can finally beat him. She laughed. What? Beat him? Brad repeated as he stared at her. Don't tell me the excitement in her eyes is actually because she wants to beat him one day, he thought. Yes, but now that I could beat him to the punch in the first time itself, I am not quite motivated, she said. Why? He asked. Because what if I am indeed stronger than him? He is slender, so naturally I have the advantage. How am I going to learn anything if I beat him in the first class itself? She explained. Brad just looked at her wide-eyed and very quietly said, You haven't seen the half of his talents. Haley thought about that for a moment. Okay, if I manage to reach his level one day, will you let me protect you? She asked. She looked at him with bright, pleading eyes, and because he was simply incapable of refusing her anything, he just nodded. She was very persuasive, and his positive response provoked such a joyful reaction. "Just you wait, Brad. I'll get stronger in no time," she said with energy and enthusiasm, as she raised her fists like a superhero. But to her surprise, and without warning, he lifted his hand and began carefully brushing aside a damp strand of hair on her face. Brad's sudden gesture made Haley's hand slowly fall to her side, and she began to turn pink. It was just a simple thing, but her heart started pounding as she watched him as he quietly focused on what he was doing. At that same moment, Tyler and Leonard came back outside and immediately stopped when they saw what was unfolding in front of them. Leonard was dumbstruck by the romantic scene before him, simply because this was the first time he had ever seen his boss appear soft and gentle. "You look shocked." "Well, don't be. Get used to it, Leonard, because we're already in the new era. The Ice Age ended long ago, ever since she came into his life," Tyler uttered softly, causing Leonard to turn to him in disbelief. Episode 112, Amy's Return. Later that day, Haley left Gray Mansion after giving Brad what had become a customary peck on the lips goodbye. She went to Greenport for her appointment with Professor Rio, the old professor at the city laboratory who was helping her prepare for her scholarship exam for Columbia University. She had spent the day taking a series of exams until late that night. When she finally left the lab, she was exhausted. She hailed a taxi from outside the laboratory, and once she sat in, she leaned back in the seat and closed her eyes. She wondered why Brad hadn't come to fetch her this time, and was thinking how much she wanted to see him at that moment. Not even a whole day had passed since she had last seen him, and she missed him already. While she was thinking about her husband, her phone rang. She checked the screen, and when she saw who was calling, she answered right away. "Hello? Hello? Amy? Finally, you called me again," she answered with excitement.
"Why, have you been waiting for my call?"
her friend asked. "Of course I have. When are you coming home? I want to talk to you about something," she explained.
"Oh, I see. Is it anything about seduction tactics? Tell me, how's it going?" she asked, giggling.
"Well," Haley began, then she paused. "Wait, have you been drinking?"
"What? Yes, a little. Why?" Amy asked.
Hearing her answer, Haley sighed, but then she decided to tell her friend what was bothering her right now, because she knew that she would never tell her this face to face. "The truth is, I do think our relationship has improved a lot," she began.
"Please, could you elaborate, my dear student? How can I possibly advise you unless you provide me with more details?"
she asked, giggling again. "Okay, well, he's always very good to me. He's always there when I need him. He lets me touch him, hug him, and kiss him. He's always considerate, lets me do as I please, and supports me in whatever I do."
"Okay, I see. But has there been any improvement in the bedroom?"
Amy asked outright. "What?" "Well," Haley paused, and her face turned pink as she lowered her voice so the driver wouldn't overhear. "I think there's been some improvement there, too."
"Like what? Could you please elaborate?"
Amy encouraged her to say more. "Well, in the beginning, he just used to remain motionless for the whole night. He didn't move at all, but now I think he's hugging me back." The moment the words came out of Haley's mouth, Amy released a very long sigh, and a few seconds later, it was as if a volcano had erupted.
"What the hell is this? It's been 2 months, for heaven's sake. This is not progress. A snail can move faster. I'm so angry I could scream. What kind of man could resist such a beautiful woman like you? He shared your bed for 2 months and nothing? Now I really want to meet him, just to confirm if he's a real man. Maybe he's a girl in disguise."
"Hey!" Haley got defensive. "I already told you, all right? He's not gay. It's just that he's different."
Yeah, I get it. But I won't be happy until I meet him myself. So you had better drag your husband over to my place with you tomorrow so I can meet him. Only then can I give you more advice. Do you understand?
"What? You're already home?" Haley asked in surprise.
"Yes. Why don't you come over now? I have lots of things to ask you,"
Amy suggested. "But I'm already on my way home," she hesitated. "Okay, I'll just let him know."
"It's okay. But tell me this. How deep have you fallen for him?"
Amy asked. "What?" Haley was so surprised by Amy's question that she was speechless for a moment.
"You can't hide anything from me. You definitely sound like you would rather rush home to him than come over to see your friend who you haven't seen in weeks."
Amy teased. But how did you know I wanted to see him?" Haley finally found the words.
"Silly question. I can just tell from your voice." So answer me, when did you fall this hard for him?
Amy asked. But Haley had stopped listening. She sat there with her mouth slightly open. But when did I? Have I really? How did she know? She wondered in shock. Episode 113. Answer these questions. Amy's questions silenced Haley for a long time. She hadn't thought about it before. She was aware that she liked Brad very much, but she hadn't thought about falling in love with him. Not yet anyway, and not so soon. She didn't know what to think or say. Instead, she just kept asking herself the same question. Am I in love with him? Is it possible? Do I love him? Meanwhile, on the other end of the phone, Amy realized what Haley's silence meant. She decided she would try to get an answer from her friend. Her original plan had been to ask her when they finally met, but now she was so curious that she couldn't wait a second longer. At the same time, Amy knew her friend well. She had known her since high school and had observed closely how she behaved around others. She had been the cool type of beauty who had never shown much interest in boys. She was always kind to the girls, but the boys were kept at an arm's distance. For this reason, Amy knew that Haley was a complete novice when it came to understanding romance and matters of the heart. She recalled that not even the then so-called #1 high school heartthrob had managed to get her attention. Back then, Haley had been like a goddess who never had any interest in any men. No one had been able to impress her, no matter what tricks they used, and Amy knew that the reason had not been because she was too busy. It was simply because Haley had no interest in romance, and she had never met anyone who could make her heart skip a beat. That was why Amy was curious about this mysterious man who had managed to conquer her without her even realizing it. If it was true that Haley had indeed fallen for him, then Amy definitely needed to meet him to know exactly what kind of man had captured her heart. So she began her interrogation.
Okay, Haley, now listen. All you have to do is answer yes or no. Have you got that?
She asked. Oh, okay, Haley replied hesitantly.
Question number 1. Do you always want to be with him?
She asked. But before Haley had a chance to respond, Amy continued with her rapid-fire questions without giving her the chance to react.
Do you always find yourself staring at him? Do you always think about him? Do you care about him? Do you think his smile is the cutest thing in the world? Do you worry about him more than yourself? Does your heart skip a beat when you're around him? Are you willing to try new things for him? Is he the person you think about first when everything else is rough? Are you comfortable around him? Do you feel safe when you're with him? Are you entertained by his childhood photos or stories? Do you feel like you just love everything about him? Are you attracted to all his quirks and strangeness?
Amy asked quickly before eventually pausing for breath. And finally, she asked,
Do you miss him as soon as he leaves?
After Amy's seemingly endless questions, Haley just gripped her cell phone, but no words came out of her mouth. She was struck dumb and she couldn't reply. Amy continued.
If your answer to most of those questions is yes, then congratulations, my dear. You've fallen in love.
When Haley still didn't respond, a smile crept over Amy's face as though she already had her answer.
Okay, it's already late and I'm really tired after my trip. But I'll wait for you and your man in the usual cafe tomorrow. Don't you dare show up without him, okay?
She added before she finally ended the call. Episode 114, Stickers and Cats. After Amy ended the call, Haley's brain replayed her questions, while her memories and feelings toward Brad answered each question with a solid yes. In the end, she realized what Amy had already said out loud to her, and she put her head in her hands. At that moment, Haley started to be aware of all the unfamiliar feelings inside of her. She felt as though she had been ignoring these emotions and burying them deep inside. As she started to acknowledge them, she began to feel like she was soaring above the clouds. She was still holding her cell phone, and when it beeped, signaling a message, she was suddenly awakened from her thoughts. She assumed it would be from her friend, but when she checked it, she saw it was actually from Mr. Clark. She opened it right away, and a photo appeared of Brad in the doorway at Gray Mansion, leaning on the doorframe, gazing out into the night. The image instantly brought a smile to her face, and as soon as she read the attached text, she felt a longing to be by her husband's side. A lifeless statue waiting for his wife to come home is about to turn into a gloomy scarecrow. In the living room at Gray Mansion, Tyler was tired and lounging lazily on the couch. He was watching Brad standing in the doorway, still in a sour mood because he had not been allowed to go and pick his wife up. He had been standing there for a long time now. He hadn't said a word or moved an inch, as though he was a robot programmed only to watch the door. Please, Your Highness, come back home. It's only you who can bring this man back to life, Tyler whispered under his breath, and to his surprise, Brad suddenly moved as if he had heard Tyler utter the words. Brad lifted his cell phone, and Tyler realized that he had received a message on his personal cell, which meant that he could only be from his wife. However, as Tyler looked at him, Brad's brows knitted together in a frown, and he strode toward him with a dark look on his face. Wait, could it be that there's trouble again? Tyler thought, and he stood up. What is it? He asked. Brad thrust the cell phone under his nose with an astonished look on his face, and what Tyler saw only caused his shoulders to sag, and he sat down again. Tyler sighed. On the screen was a sticker of a gray and gloomy-looking animated cat that his wife had sent. Tyler just looked at him. He was at a loss as to why Brad was showing him this. Then Brad finally spoke. What does this mean? Is this some sort of secret message or a code? She just sent me this out of nowhere, he said. Tyler just looked at him, speechless, and he didn't know where to begin. Code? My God, this monster. I understand that he's not the slightest bit interested in social media. I know he doesn't have a single account on any social platforms and that he doesn't ever check out any of what it's all about. But this is just too much, damn it. Although Tyler was infuriated by Brad and his ignorance, he knew more than anyone why he was unknowledgeable about these things. No, it's not a code, he explained, with more patience than he felt. It's a sticker. The sender uses it to show what they're feeling. Do you get it? So this means she's sad. But why? Brad asked. How should I know? Why don't you ask her? Tyler's patience was wearing thin, and he shrugged his shoulders. So Brad decided to do just that. But before he could dial her number, another message came through. It was the same cat, but this time it was running and looking excited. And before Brad could even react to the second sticker, a third arrived. It was the same cat again, but this time it was standing holding a gift box. Tap it, Tyler instructed. So he did. A second later, a banner appeared with the words, I miss you. Brad froze in place, his eyes just glued to it. Episode 115, I Want a Hug. Brad was still in a daze when Tyler saw Haley appear at the entrance. She put her fingers to her lips and signaled to the disguised Tyler to keep quiet as she carefully crept silently toward them. However, before she reached Brad, he had already felt her presence, and he immediately turned his head, causing her to stop halfway. I'm home, she said brightly. When Brad saw her and her dazzling smile, he felt as though the silent and cold living room of a moment ago had turned warm and welcoming as soon as she had appeared. He felt that she was the sole bright candle in this house and that without her, everything would remain in darkness. He walked toward her. Are you all right? He asked, and she gave him a puzzled look. What? She said as she looked at him in confusion. The cat, he replied, but she still didn't understand. The cat? What? Wait. Could it be that he's asking about my message? She thought. Oh, that, she finally replied as soon as she realized what he was talking about. She ran her fingers through her hair and continued. I was just a bit sad a while ago, but I'm fine now. Why were you sad? He persisted. Well, it was because I was missing you, she explained. Her words were followed by silence and they stared into each other's eyes. Haley decided that she would be honest about her feelings toward him from now on. She didn't want to hide anything from him. It was Brad who eventually broke the silence. Tell me what to do to make you feel better, he said in a soft and gentle voice that made Haley's heart skip a beat. And while he was being so adorably cute again, she decided to take advantage of the innocent beast standing before her. I want a hug, she said simply. He immediately took her in his arms without another word. She buried herself in his warm arms, unable to describe how it made her feel. She couldn't think about anything else and only wanted to stay there and hug him back like never before. He cocooned her in his warmth and made her feel safe and protected. She closed her eyes and buried her face in his chest. After 5 minutes, Brad began to feel hot, and he started to wonder whether his hug was working or not. Haley was about to release him when he suddenly spoke. Is it working? He asked. Haley couldn't speak, but she let out a low chuckle. This man is at it again with his cuteness, she thought. She was still chuckling when Brad released her. As soon as she looked at him, she raised her hand and messed his hair playfully, and he became motionless again. As she looked at him, Haley realized that parts of Brad's unspoken actions were why she had fallen for this guy without even knowing it. She was certain that he didn't need to do a single thing because, little by little, he had seduced her from the very beginning with his awkwardness, strangeness, and mystery. Why are you so cute? How can you even think that it's not working? Haley asked as she continued to chuckle and mess with his hair, not minding how close their faces were and not knowing that for quite some time now, Brad's gaze had been locked onto her luscious, irresistible lips. Episode 116, Intense Training. Later that night, Haley was waiting for Brad as she lay quietly on the bed. She was yawning and her eyes were sleepy. She was feeling tired and mentally exhausted after all the series of tests she had taken during the day at the city laboratory and training for her scholarship exams. But before she fell asleep, she wanted to tell Brad about her plan to take him out to meet her best friend tomorrow. Although determined to remain awake, she weakened and briefly closed her eyes. As soon as she did, sleep overcame her and she was lost to the world of dreams. The moment Haley succumbed to her exhaustion, the bedroom door quietly opened and Brad slowly walked toward the bed. He sat down on the edge of the bed and watched his sleeping wife. After a while, his gaze fixed on her lips and he felt the urge to kiss her. He started to feel those unfamiliar emotions again, and his body stiffened. Each time their lips had connected, no matter how briefly, Brad had felt thousands of shocks firing through his entire body. He had found himself longing for this feeling more and more. But as he sat looking at his sleeping wife, Brad felt something completely different and unfamiliar. As he stared at her, he felt that it wasn't just the usual brief kiss he wanted. He wanted more. He spent almost an hour just watching her until he kissed her gently on the forehead before finally lying down beside her. The next morning, Haley woke up without Brad by her side. As she watched the rays of sunshine streaming through the window, she remembered she hadn't told Brad about her plan for the day. She got up immediately and rushed out of the bedroom and downstairs, hoping that he hadn't left the house yet because she knew that Amy wouldn't be at all happy if she turned up without her husband. As soon as she reached the bottom of the stairs, she immediately looked around the living room and toward the couch where he usually sat drinking his coffee. But to her surprise and disappointment, he wasn't there. "Good morning, Miss Haley." Leonard's voice rang out behind her, and she quickly turned around. "Good morning, Leonard. Have you seen Brad?" she asked anxiously, and when he nodded, she sighed with relief. "Where is he?" she asked. "Oh, they're in the garden," he replied, and she immediately turned and walked toward the door leading outside. "Wait, Miss Haley, they're currently in the middle of an intense..." But Leonard's voice trailed off as Haley ignored him, so he ran after her. He caught up with her by the door where she was staring open-mouthed and wide-eyed at the sight of the two men fighting. She looked as though she couldn't believe what she was seeing, and Leonard could understand why. Even he was still amazed by the inhuman skills of his boss and his personal bodyguard. "They're just training, right?" Haley finally asked without averting her gaze. "Yes, Miss Haley. Those two always try to do a bit of training if they have time. This is quite normal for them. It's quite intense, isn't it?" he asked. "This is normal?" she asked in shock. "If it's normal, why do they look like they're trying to kill each other?" Episode 117. Stop the fight. Haley was having a hard time believing what she was seeing. Brad and Tyler were fighting ferociously, as if they were real enemies, which shocked her to the core. She had never seen any training like this, and it was for her to comprehend. The fight before her was like one of those unreal choreographed fights she'd only seen in action movies. Tyler even had a gun, and he was attacking while Brad seemed to be defending. Because no matter what Leonard told her, the fight just looked too real and too fierce. She could see how skilled Brad was. He was much more talented than Leonard, and she had thought Leonard better than anyone she'd ever met. At that moment, watching Brad fight was exactly like watching a vicious and deadly beast. She had never imagined his fighting skills would be this good. But Haley thought that anyone watching might truly believe him to be a monster. And even though she was anxious watching the fight, she couldn't help but wonder how Brad's mask remained intact despite all his insane moves. But Tyler was like the evil villain from hell no one could defeat. He was overpowering Brad at every turn, but he seemed to be using underhanded tactics in an otherwise fair fight. "You can see how skilled Brad's bodyguard is, so you don't have to worry about him, okay?" Leonard whispered in her ear, interrupting her thoughts. His words reminded Haley of what she had said to Brad about protecting him herself, and she felt embarrassed. As she continued to watch the two fighting men, her eyes widened in shock when Tyler locked Brad's arms behind his back and pointed the gun at his head. Her heart skipped a beat, and without a second thought, she ran toward them. She stood in front of Brad, and she started to try to pull the gun away from Tyler. "Please stop it, Mr. Clark. Please let him go. I'll do anything you want. Please, just let him go," she pleaded. Suddenly, the two men froze and looked at her. By now, she was on the verge of tears. Tyler loosened his grip on Brad, and Haley immediately pulled him away and wrapped her arms around him in a protective hug. By the time both Brad and Tyler recovered from the shock, Tyler covered his mouth with his hand and tried to hold back his laughter. "Who is this angel flying in to protect her husband? This is killing me," he laughed to himself. Brad, meanwhile, was starting to redden as he was being hugged protectively by his wife. He hadn't expected her to show up suddenly and be so concerned, almost to the point of tears. But more than anything, he was shocked by his own feelings. He felt bad for her misunderstanding the situation and putting her through that in the first place. He felt guilty that she was worried about what she had seen and that it had upset her. But thankfully, he managed to come back to his senses the moment he saw his wife scowling angrily at Tyler. He put his hand on her head and began to caress her hair. "I'm sorry," Brad said softly, and she looked up at him, but before she could open her mouth to reply, Tyler spoke. "Miss Haley, I'm very sorry for scaring you," he said. And when Haley turned her head to look at him, he pulled the gun's trigger in his hand, and a stream of water came out of the muzzle. Haley bit her lip and was immediately embarrassed by her naivety. She then slowly let go of Brad as she hesitantly turned toward Tyler, embarrassed, but not sorry. But why did you both look like you wanted to kill each other? You even hurt him," she said. "It's because your husband won't train with me if I don't take it seriously," Tyler replied. And she looked over at Brad again. "Is he telling the truth?" she asked, and when Brad nodded, she looked relieved. "What is this, Miss Haley? Do you think I'm the villain now? You don't believe what I say anymore?" Tyler said, looking hurt and disappointed. "Well, it's because you're scary," Haley admitted. "What? Have you already forgotten who the real scary person is here? Isn't it supposed to be that man beside you?" Tyler asked indignantly. "Brad's not scary at all. Brad is adorable. How could he be scary?" When they heard what Haley had said, the three men, Brad, Tyler, and Leonard, all had the same reaction. They were all speechless, and the only sound breaking the silence was a noisy crow flying overhead. Episode 118, Dress Down to Head Out. Brad and Tyler were in Brad's study. "Brad, I really don't need to tell you this, but it's still not safe today," Tyler said in a serious tone as he helped him with his mask. "But isn't it always safe so long as you're around?" Brad asked calmly. "Stop putting so much pressure on me," Tyler complained. "When do you ever feel pressured?" Brad retorted. "Hey, as I've said before, you're way too relaxed. I can always protect you, but there are still things that are beyond my control," he said. "Are there?" "You..." Tyler's voice trailed off and he sighed heavily. "This man really is hopeless sometimes," he thought. "Fine, just don't slack off while we're out," Tyler warned as he finally relented. Haley was sitting on the couch wearing a casual yet cool outfit of jeans and a loose white t-shirt with sneakers. She had a plain black baseball cap in her hand. Brad 2.0 came downstairs wearing his lifelike mask, and as he approached, she stood up and took in his appearance. From his handsome masked face to his casual black suit, and she bit her lip. How does he do it? He always looks so gorgeous. But in this suit, he looks amazing, she thought. Haley had decided to wear something more casual that would help her blend in more. She didn't want to attract the attention of any of the modeling scouts that lurked around Grainport. She had been harassed by them several times before, and she didn't want to risk it happening while she was with Brad 2.0. Besides, he had only agreed to drop her at the cafe. He would leave shortly after being introduced to Amy, as he had a business meeting afterward. The way he looked and how he was dressed, like someone important and sophisticated, made her feel dressed as casually as she was, as if she were his delicate bodyguard. But she liked the look of them together, him in his sharp black suit and her in her casual white t-shirt. Meanwhile, Brad was staring at her because it was the first time he had seen her with her hair pulled back from her face and tied in a ponytail. He liked what he saw. When he looked at her properly and noticed what she was wearing and the baseball cap in her hand, he asked, "Should I go and get changed?" "What? No, there's no need." Then she paused for a moment to think. The more she looked at him, the more she felt trouble looming. Looking at him and how striking he was, how handsome and irresistible, she was sure that there would be an uproar if she took him out in public. Haley imagined the attention he would attract, and she suddenly became anxious that this would all be a little too much for him. After all, he wasn't used to going out in public. It was as if she were a manager, worrying over her precious celebrity client. "You have a business meeting later after you drop me off, right?" she asked. He nodded in reply. "Okay, wait here," she instructed him and ran upstairs. She returned with another baseball cap identical to hers a few moments later. She adjusted it and asked him to bend down so she could place the cap on his head. Afterwards, she took a step back and studied him from head to toe before asking him to remove his blazer. Brad just complied without a word. Haley looked at him again. "I'm going to roll up your sleeves," she said. He nodded again without hesitation, while Haley focused on rolling up his sleeves carefully. He remained motionless, watching her every move, unable to tear his gaze away from her. Episode 118, Dress Down to Head Out. Brad and Tyler were in Brad's study. "Brad, I really don't need to tell you this, but it's still not safe today," Tyler said in a serious tone as he helped him with his mask. "But isn't it always safe so long as you're around?" Brad asked calmly. "Stop putting so much pressure on me," Tyler complained. When do you ever feel pressured? Brad retorted. Hey, as I've said before, you're way too relaxed. I can always protect you, but there are still things that are beyond my control, he said. Are there? You... Tyler's voice trailed off and he sighed heavily. This man really is hopeless sometimes, he thought. Fine. Just don't slack off while we're out, Tyler warned as he finally relented. Haley was sitting on the couch wearing a casual yet cool outfit of jeans and a loose white t-shirt with sneakers. She had a plain black baseball cap in her hand. Brad 2.0 came downstairs wearing his lifelike mask, and as he approached, she stood up and took in his appearance. From his handsome masked face to his casual black suit, and she bit her lip. How does he do it? He always looks so gorgeous. But in this suit, he looks amazing, she thought. Haley had decided to wear something more casual that would help her blend in more. She didn't want to attract the attention of any of the modeling scouts that lurked around Greenport. She had been harassed by them several times before, and she didn't want to risk it happening while she was with Brad 2.0. Besides, he had only agreed to drop her at the cafe. He would leave shortly after being introduced to Amy, as he had a business meeting afterward. The way he looked and how he was dressed, like someone important and sophisticated, made her feel dressed as casually as she was, as if she were his delicate bodyguard. But she liked the look of them together, him in his sharp black suit and her in her casual white t-shirt. Meanwhile, Brad was staring at her because it was the first time he had seen her with her hair pulled back from her face and tied in a ponytail. He liked what he saw. When he looked at her properly and noticed what she was wearing and the baseball cap in her hand, he asked, "Should I go and get changed?" "What? No, there's no need." Then she paused for a moment to think. The more she looked at him, the more she felt trouble looming. Looking at him and how striking he was, how handsome and irresistible, she was sure that there would be an uproar if she took him out in public. Haley imagined the attention he would attract, and she suddenly became anxious that this would all be a little too much for him. After all, he wasn't used to going out in public. It was as if she were a manager, worrying over her precious celebrity client. "You have a business meeting later after you drop me off, right?" she asked. He nodded in reply. "Okay, wait here," she instructed him and ran upstairs. She returned with another baseball cap identical to hers a few moments later. She adjusted it and asked him to bend down so she could place the cap on his head. Afterwards, she took a step back and studied him from head to toe before asking him to remove his blazer. Brad just complied without a word. Haley looked at him again. "I'm going to roll up your sleeves," she said. He nodded again without hesitation, while Haley focused on rolling up his sleeves carefully. He remained motionless, watching her every move, unable to tear his gaze away from her. Episode 119, The World in His Hands. A beautiful young woman in a stunning red dress was sitting quietly in the corner of a cafe in the center of Greenport. She was extremely attractive with alluring eyes and a flirtatious manner, and she oozed natural charisma. She was one of those women who could seduce a man with a single glance. Amy wasn't as beautiful as Haley, but her powers of seduction were incomparable. The other customers in the cafe couldn't resist staring at her. When confronted with her enigmatic charm, people were helpless and gazed at her as if bewitched. But Amy was completely unaware of the attention she was attracting from those around her, and was deep in thought. She was concentrating on how best to approach her friend's dilemma, and how she would find out what was wrong with her man. Amy knew her friend was beautiful inside and out, and she couldn't fathom how any normal man would be able to resist her. She was determined to discover whether he was gay or not, whether he was a real man. If necessary, she would establish whether he suffered from any medical condition which might explain his reticence. She would leave no stone unturned. In Amy's eyes, her friend was a goddess, and unbelievably, a man had been able to resist her after sharing a bed with her for 2 months. So she had made it her mission to find out why. "Today, I will find out what is wrong with this man," she vowed. A few moments later, Amy was still preoccupied and unaware of the world around her, when 3 people entered the cafe. They all walked toward her. 2 wore identical black baseball caps, while the third took a seat at an empty table next to her. "Amy, finally! It's great to see you again." Haley's voice immediately rang out, causing her to snap from her reverie. Amy looked up, smiled widely, then stood to hug her best friend. "Hello, honey. Yes, we finally meet again. I've missed you so much." Amy's voice sounded as naturally beguiling as ever, but Haley let go before she had the chance to give her the full greeting she had prepared. Haley was as wary as ever. Amy's lips curved into a mischievous smile and she chuckled. She had always enjoyed teasing the innocent Haley in high school, giving her an unexpected kiss on the cheek, which would cause Haley to freak out and run away. Haley is still so cute and innocent, even though she's not a teenage schoolgirl anymore, Amy thought. Amy, this is Brad, my husband, Haley said, and Amy's gaze immediately shifted to the man behind her. She took one look at the gorgeous man standing behind her friend, and as soon as she lay eyes on him, her unbreakable composure and boundless confidence faltered for a moment. Amy was no stranger to powerful people. She was the former favorite child and heir to a large corporation, and from an early age, she had mixed around with the rich and famous. She had grown up observing how wealthy and powerful people behaved, and had noticed that they had an inexplicable aura. It was as if they had the confidence and self-assurance to know that they had the country at their feet, that anything was possible, that they could have or do whatever they wished. It could strike fear into you. The man who stood before her now was one such person, but she was convinced that he was far more powerful than anyone she had ever met before. As she looked at him, she couldn't help thinking that this man didn't merely have the country at his feet, but he carried himself with the confidence of someone who felt he had the whole world in his hands. She knew that this kind of aura wasn't something that could be faked. It was an instinct and energy that you were born with. By the time she noticed Brad's eyes, she almost had admitted defeat before she'd even started. She could quite happily have just sat back and stared deep into the surreal, smoky, silver gray eyes and be mesmerized. For a moment, she almost forgot why she was there. Amy had absolute confidence in her skills and expertise when it came to the opposite sex. She prided herself on the ability to read men's inner thoughts through their eyes. She loved to read their thoughts and manipulate them for her own purposes, and never before had she failed. But here was a man whose eyes even she couldn't read. They were ethereal and unfathomable. She felt as though she were gazing into two beautiful but frozen diamonds, 121, and that even if she spent 1,000 years trying to read Amy them, finally recovered they would remain and quietly excused herself while she went to the restroom. How could such a person closer to Brad in this world? But before he could open his mouth, Brad spoke.
Tyler, do you think I just scared her?
He asked.
Obviously. Who wouldn't be frightened of you when you suddenly turn like that?
Tyler replied, but to his surprise, Brad appeared a little troubled. He frowned and said,
Come on, Brad. Don't tell me you're worried about that woman.
That woman is the only friend my wife has. She's important to her, so go and apologize for me.
Brad ordered. What? Why should I apologize? Why should you apologize? Shouldn't she apologize for trying to seduce you? Tyler complained.
Seduce me? When did she try to seduce me?
Brad looked confused. Tyler was speechless.
As usual, he's clueless. Seriously, how could he not even notice? But how could I have forgotten so quickly that he only has eyes for his beloved wife? He thought with a sigh. Okay, I get it, Tyler said before he stood and walked toward the restroom. The truth was that they both knew who Amy was and all about her. They knew about her deep bond with Haley and just how close they had been since high school. They had also discovered that when Amy had been in a position to help, she had done what she could for Haley, particularly when Owen had gotten sick and had needed to be admitted to the hospital. That was the reason why, when Haley had asked him to meet her, Brad couldn't refuse. He knew that to Haley, Amy was her family. Brad had even tried to suppress his cold aura around Amy, but eventually, he could not control it. And the worst thing for Tyler was that Brad would never apologize to anyone, except his wife, which was why Tyler had to stand in and apologize for him. But Tyler was now suspicious of Amy and what had just happened between her and Brad. What is she trying to do? Is she really just testing him? He wondered. By the time Amy stepped out of the restroom, Tyler was leaning on the wall outside, waiting for her. So, why is Mr. Bodyguard here? Are you waiting for me? She asked in her usual seductive voice. There's something we need to talk about, said Tyler. Sorry, Mr. Bodyguard, but I don't talk to ordinary men, she said dismissively as she went to walk past him, infuriating Tyler. What? Did she actually call me ordinary, he thought? Tyler grabbed her by the wrist to stop her. What are you trying to do? Aren't you supposed to be Miss Haley's best friend? Why are you trying to seduce her husband? He asked sharply. Oh, don't tell me you're also their relationship bodyguard? Amy laughed.
Even if you're important to her, I'm still warning you. Leave them alone. Don't interfere, Tyler said with a hint of a threat. His words were firm and serious, but Amy was more interested in the fact that he had not reacted to what she said about him being ordinary. A fire sparked in her eyes, and she chuckled seductively. Maybe I've touched a nerve there, she thought. She moved her body closer to him, but Tyler remained unfazed. Mr. Clark, do you know what? I'm telling the truth when I say I don't talk to ordinary men like you, but... Her seductive voice trailed off, and without another word, she rubbed her hand along his leg. This action finally caused Tyler to freak out and lose his composure. What the hell are you doing? What? He cried out. He couldn't even finish what he was saying as the woman's hands began to massage his inner thigh. Tyler finally, and he violently caught both of Amy's wrists as he pushed her against the wall. God! I can't believe Miss Haley's friend is actually such an inappropriate woman, he raged. Tyler had obviously been completely shocked and flustered by Amy's move. At the moment, he looked like a young man who had been touched by a woman for the first time. The look on his face finally broke Haley's composure as she roared with laughter. You look so tough, and yet you're so easily rattled. You're quite amusing, Mr. Clark, even though you're just ordinary looking, Amy said as she continued to chuckle. Tyler was exasperated. Why was this woman repeating the word ordinary over and over again? Shut up! Being ordinary is better than being inappropriate, such as you, he fumed. I'm actually getting to like you more, Mr. Ordinary-looking bodyguard, she mused. I will never let a woman like you get close to Brad again, Tyler hissed. Amy laughed. You really are one hell of a bodyguard. Well, it's not like I have any intention of touching that scary man ever again. The fact that he didn't even react to my moves is enough. I'm sure Haley will be happy with him. Her voice had dramatically changed from seductive to a simple, soft voice. She was still laughing, but Tyler could hear a glimmer of sincerity in her voice, and he finally let go of her wrists. You're saying you just did it to test him? Tyler asked, and Amy just sighed as she shrugged and shook her head. Well, you can't blame me. I was worried as soon as she told me she suddenly got married out of nowhere. Truth be told, I didn't trust your boss at all before this, but now I'm relieved. Since he didn't react toward me, then I'm sure no woman could steal him away from my darling Haley. But still, weren't your methods a bit extreme? He's still your best friend's husband, and he's still a man. What if he had reacted? Mr. Clark asked, and Amy's eyes turned sharp as daggers. Episode 122, Testing Tyler. Don't you think you went a bit too far? He's your best friend's husband, and he's still a man. What if you had gotten a reaction out of him? Tyler persisted. When she heard these words, Amy's seductive eyes turned fierce as she answered him. Oh, that's simple. If I had managed to seduce him, then he doesn't deserve to be Haley's husband. Haley deserves a man who can remain loyal to her. And honestly, if he had responded at that moment, I would have made sure he never hurt Haley again. I hate guys who easily fall for any form of seduction, especially when they're already committed. Men like that don't deserve the love of a good woman. As she spoke, Tyler could see the intense hatred and anger in her eyes. As he watched her, he remembered what he had read about her when he had researched Haley's acquaintances. Amy Zimmerman had been the sole daughter and heir of the Zimmerman Corporation. However, on her 18th birthday, her father had suddenly disowned her and falsely declared that she was not his real daughter. On that same day, her father had announced his wedding to his second wife and introduced their 2-year-old son as the new and sole heir. It hadn't even been a year since the death of his first wife, Amy's mother. According to rumors, the new wife had allegedly seduced Amy's father, and the man had fallen head over heels for her, even though his wife had been still alive at that time. Her father's decision had triggered a series of tragic events that had affected Amy. Knowing her background and situation, Tyler could understand the reason for the anger in her eyes. Seduction is indeed powerful, but honest and genuine men don't just fall blindly for another woman, do they? And besides, I believe that men who truly love their wives would never let another woman cloud their judgment, no matter how enticing she may be. That's why you don't need to worry about me touching your boss again. I truly respect loyal men like him, and I'm happy that my dear Haley has found a man like that. And don't you worry, Mr. Overprotective Bodyguard. I know the consequences of my actions. Of course, I need to go over and apologize to him first. What about me? I didn't fall into your trap. Don't you need to respect and apologize to me as well? Tyler grumbled. What? Do you actually have a girlfriend? Even though you only look ordinary, she teased. Amy's last sentence infuriated Tyler again, but he tried to hide his irritation. No, I don't have a girlfriend, he admitted. You don't? Then why didn't you fall for my obvious charms? Are you perhaps gay by any chance? Amy asked. You? Tyler began to get angry again. You can't blame me for asking. You're single, right? You don't have any reason to resist me, she reasoned. It's quite simple. Women like you just don't appeal to me, Tyler finally retorted, and he began to walk away. Amy's eyes narrowed, and then she chased after him. You're lying. How dare you say that to me? You're just an ordinary, unattractive, and overprotective bodyguard. Quiet, little Miss Inappropriate. We don't want another scene, do we? The food arrived and the four began to eat. Haley and Brad were seated on one side of the table and were wrapped in their own world, just enjoying being so close together. However, the atmosphere was decidedly frosty between the bodyguard and the best friend on the other side of the table, and tension was brewing. Amy opened her mouth to ask Haley about Owen when Tyler stopped her. Don't disturb them, he calmly but firmly whispered in her ear. She looked at him with undisguised fury. Who does he think he is, this normal-looking, unattractive, overprotective bodyguard? I just want to talk to my friend. Tyler kept his cool while Amy glared at him as though he had done something unforgivable. Tyler noticed her angry stare and turned toward her. What? Didn't you say you like men who don't fall for your traps? What's with those looks you're throwing at me now? He said mischievously, but the next second, Tyler almost fell off his chair when the woman's hand was suddenly on his leg again. Tyler started to look extremely flustered, and he clenched his fist as he tried not to react. But as expected, Brad noticed something was up right away. What's wrong? Brad asked blankly. Tyler tried to force a laugh while at the same time trying to suppress his fury. Nothing. This food is really delicious, he replied, but as he was talking, Amy's hand was slowly moving higher up his thigh in an attempt to test his limits. Obviously, it was her way to try to get her own back. Amy, is there anything wrong? Why are you not eating? Haley asked her friend. And like the true expert she was, Amy just laughed as she replied, I'm just so busy watching such a romantic, devoted couple in front of me that I forgot to eat. Haley could only blink, and the innocent and devoted couple had no idea what was unfolding beneath the table across from them. Episode 123, Shut Up, Tyler. Once they had finished their meal, they left the cafe and stood outside next to the black car. Amy took the opportunity to push Haley, making her stumble over toward Brad. As expected, he quickly caught her in his arms. She watched happily as he held her carefully, as if she was the most fragile and precious porcelain that might break at any moment. But this was quickly followed by disappointment when the expected kiss didn't happen. Instead, once he was sure Haley was all right, he just quietly stepped into the car. Amy's eyes narrowed. Then, returning to her role as teacher, Amy nudged Haley and silently urged her to do something before he left. Haley realized what her friend was doing and smiled as if to say she already had the situation under control and knew what she was doing. Before the car door closed, Haley bent down and put her head inside. Brad also knew what was coming. He had become used to her brief goodbye kisses, so he was no longer surprised. But this time, Haley put her hand on the back of his neck and gently pulled him toward her before she kissed him. She was quick, yet gentle. This kiss wasn't the brief kiss they usually shared. This time, she pressed her lips onto his, a little bit harder and a little bit longer, before she slowly released him. Brad was struck dumb, and the car door was closed before he could react. Meanwhile, as Tyler opened the door on the other side, Amy called out to him. Until next time, Mr. Ordinary, she said mischievously, but Tyler just ignored her and climbed inside the car. As soon as he sat and closed the door, Tyler began to grumble. That woman, he muttered as he ran his fingers through his hair. Ooh, I wonder who upset the great Tyler this time, said Alan in the driving seat. Brad was still too dazed to respond. That woman actually called me ordinary looking and unattractive. Can you believe that? Tyler was clearly annoyed. What's the big deal? She's just talking about your disguise, right? Said Alan. Even so, it doesn't change the fact that she's calling a handsome guy like me ordinary and unattractive, said Tyler sulkily. Alan laughed. Well, isn't it about time you found someone who can bully you as much as you bully others? What? Hey, who are you calling a bully? When did I ever bully anyone? Tyler asked indignantly. And you don't even know it. Seriously. You and the boss are slowly drifting away into another dimension. I can't keep up these days, sighed Alan. What? What are you? Tyler turned toward Brad, and he stopped speaking when he saw Brad quietly gazing out of the window with the back of his hand covering his mouth. Not only that, but it was also obvious he was in a very pleasant mood because it was as if a bright pinkish light surrounded him. So, what happened to him? Did Miss Haley do something unusual? Tyler asked. Well, I guess so. She might have stepped up the kiss a bit, replied Alan. Well, she sure knows when to be bold. I don't really know how to cure his ignorance in romance anymore, but I do know this monster turned human is learning, said Tyler. Do you think he'll be the one to make a move soon? Alan asked. Well, I don't know what's going on in his tiny little befuddled mind, but I know he's reaching his limit, Tyler said. Hey, are you sure you should be talking about him like that? Alan said. Tyler laughed. You don't have to worry. Do you think I would risk my life like that? Do you think he can even hear us right now? Even if I poke his cheek right now, he won't. Tyler. The moment Brad called his name, Tyler immediately clamped his mouth shut, while Alan laughed silently to himself. Please shut up, Brad continued. Tyler went quiet, but because Brad's voice hadn't been icy cold, he remained unfazed. Anyway, Brad, have you told her we're leaving tomorrow? He asked, and the bright atmosphere around him slowly dissipated. I guess the answer is no, Tyler sighed. Make sure you tell her tonight. It'll only be worse if you tell her at the last minute, he warned. Episode 124, No One at Home. Haley and Amy went straight to Cold Spring because Amy just couldn't wait any longer to see Owen. When she finally saw him, she almost broke down. Owen! When did you grow so big? Bring back cute little Owen, she cried. Amy, I can't stay a little boy forever. Little Owen is gone now. I want to grow up fast so that I can help you both after all you've done for me, he said. Wow, Haley, when did Owen suddenly get so mature? No, I still want my little Owen back so I can babysit, she insisted, laughing. Amy kept teasing until Owen gently tugged her into a big hug. Amy, why do I feel like you haven't grown up at all? Hey, stop acting like an old man. You'll hurt my feelings. You don't know how it feels when we see the cute little ones growing up too quickly, Amy said. Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry, Owen said. They spent the rest of the day together. Amy insisted that Haley talk to her about her and Brad. Haley told her everything, with the exception of the contract and the rule about her not seeing her husband's face. They chatted all day, and in the early evening, they went their separate ways. When Haley reached the front door at Gray Mansion, she stood there quietly. She was still thinking about what Amy had told her, but suddenly she felt as though something wasn't quite right. As she stood outside, she had the strangest feeling that no one was inside the house. When she finally moved to go inside, she heard the sound of a car approaching at speed. She stood there, shocked, as the car screeched to a halt in front of the house about 30 feet from her. Haley was still stunned as she watched the car door open, but her eyes widened when she saw Brad step out of the car, supported by Alan, as though he was injured. Her heart began to beat wildly, and she ran down the steps toward the car. Another car screeched to a halt in front of her. She ran around the second car and followed Brad and Alan toward a large door that the butler had once told her led to an underground wine cellar. Haley's mind was blank, and she tried to call out, but no sounds would come. All she knew was that she wanted to see Brad and check that he was all right. Brad and Alan walked through the door, and it closed behind them. When Haley reached the door, she grasped the handle, but someone immediately held her wrist to stop her. Haley raised her head, and when she saw it was Tyler, she bit her lip as she stared at him. Please, let me in. I want to see him. I need to see him, she said with such worry in her voice and fear in her eyes. Looking at her, Tyler felt an indescribable sense of guilt as he said, I'm sorry, Miss Haley, but you can't go in. But you don't have to worry. He's fine, I assure you. It's just a superficial injury. Then why can't I see him? She pleaded with tears in her eyes. Well, because, he faltered. Is it because I'll see his face if I go in? She asked quietly. Tyler nodded, and Haley clenched her fist as tight as she could before she finally let go of the door handle. "I understand," she said as she backed off. Meanwhile, Tyler could only watch. She looked helpless and on the verge of tears. He felt troubled because he could tell just how hurt she was feeling, and there was nothing he could do. Episode 125, Car Accident. Haley lowered her face as she stood beside Tyler. She remained silent, and Tyler watched as she clenched her fists quietly. He was reminded of the first time he had met her in the middle of the road. She had looked devastated like this then, but lately, she was constantly smiling whenever she had Brad by her side. She was always bright and breezy. This was the first time he had seen her so downhearted since he had brought her to the house. Seeing her like this, he had a strange feeling of resentment. He didn't want to see this woman in such a state. Yet, he couldn't grant her wish of letting her in. He racked his brain for something he could tell her that would give her some comfort for the moment. "Miss Haley, please don't worry. It's just a small wound to his forehead. He bumped his head on the window in the crash," he said. But when Haley heard these words, she looked up at him with wide eyes and said in horror, "There was a car accident? Then why did you bring him here? Why didn't you take him to the hospital?" Her voice was edged with panic. "It's fine. It was just a minor accident and..." Tyler paused as another car pulled up on the drive. The car stopped and a tall, beautiful, blonde woman stepped out. Haley's gaze immediately locked onto the woman as she walked quickly toward them. She was stunning. She looked at Tyler and he just opened the door, allowing her to enter. She stepped inside without a sideways glance at Haley. Tyler immediately closed the door after her. Haley didn't know why, but when she saw the woman enter through the door, her heart felt like it had suddenly twisted in her chest. She felt as though something was caught in her throat and it was hard to breathe. She bit her lip hard as she clenched her fists again. Haley began to feel an unpleasant sensation she had never felt before. It was completely alien to her, and she could not explain it except that it was the kind of pain she never knew could exist. "Don't worry, this door leads to a secret underground hospital exclusively for Brad. That woman is one of his personal doctors. She is one of the best doctors around, so you don't have to worry, okay?" he said gently, but Haley said nothing in response. The door opened a few seconds later, and Leonard stepped out. The moment Haley saw him, she went and hugged him tightly from behind and buried her face in his back. Leonard and Tyler were both shocked by this and looked at each other for a few moments. Then Tyler realized that Haley had just needed comfort and that she had hugged Leonard, believing him to be gay and therefore not a threat to her relationship with Brad. Tyler breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't know how to comfort her, so he realized it was a good thing that Leonard had shown up when he did. Leonard, on the other hand, wasn't looking fine at all. He was looking extremely uncomfortable. He looked at Tyler with pleading eyes, asking for some kind of assistance. But Tyler just gestured for him to comfort Haley before he disappeared through the door, leaving Leonard wondering how best to behave in this awkward situation. Leonard finally managed to calm himself and stop panicking, and he began to speak softly to Haley. "Brad really is fine. He just hurt his forehead. He's undergoing some tests to make sure he wasn't hurt anywhere else. Let's just wait for a moment, okay? You can go in after a few minutes." Leonard tried his best to be as gentle and comforting as possible. Episode 126, The Green-Eyed Monster. "Brad really is fine. He just hurt his forehead. He's just undergoing a checkup to make sure he isn't hurt anywhere else. Let's wait for a moment, okay? You can see him soon," Leonard said. When she heard his reassuring words, she forced herself to speak. "Is he really all right?" she asked without letting go of him. She spoke softly and quietly, and Leonard knew just how worried and hurt she was, just by the sound of her voice. "Do you really think I'm lying?" he replied softly. She became silent for a moment before she finally let go. When he turned around and saw the distress etched on her face, he almost wanted to fling the door wide open for her. Instead, he just took off his coat and gently draped it over her shoulders. "Are you all right?" he asked, even though she was obviously far from all right. But Leonard himself was on the verge of a panic attack and didn't know what to do for the best. "Leonard, can you take me somewhere? I don't want Brad to see me like this. We'll come back as soon as I feel better." Leonard could only nod. Moments later, Leonard was driving with Haley toward Greenport. She had said she just wanted to spend some time with her friend, and the moment they stopped in front of the apartment building, she immediately got out of the car without a word. Leonard followed her, but when he saw her hugging the woman who had come down to meet her, he leaned on the wall and decided to wait for her outside. Meanwhile, Amy was surprised when Haley hugged her so tightly. She knew that when Haley was like that, she felt helpless or had been hurt. Haley wasn't weak, and no matter what life had thrown at her, she had faced it with strength, so it was rare to see her behave like this. Amy and Haley rode the elevator up to Amy's apartment and sat on the couch together. "Hey, are you going to tell me what happened?" Amy asked gently as she rubbed her friend's back. Haley didn't answer, and Amy's face creased with worry. "Tell me what happened," she asked again. "Amy, I don't know. I feel really awful. I feel like my heart is being twisted," she replied. As soon as Amy heard those words, a flash of understanding crossed her mind. "Why?" she asked, but before Haley could respond, she continued, "Is it something to do with another woman?" When Amy said those words, Haley looked up, surprised. It had simply not occurred to her that the beautiful blonde woman in the white coat might be the source of her heartache. Earlier, outside the mansion, she had already felt the now familiar ache of not being allowed to see him. However, when she had seen the beautiful blonde granted access to Brad, when she had been prevented from seeing him, she had started to feel an unfamiliar pain. "So, my dear Haley is getting jealous now," Amy said with a meaningful smile on her face. "What? Jealous?" Haley stammered. "Yep, I think you're jealous," Amy confirmed. "Does jealousy always hurt this much?" Haley asked. "Well, that depends. The level of pain you feel is relative to how much you love him. The more you love him, the more jealousy you will feel, the more you'll hurt." They both fell silent for a moment. "I didn't realize love was this painful," said Haley finally, and Amy rubbed her back again. "You need to learn about these things, Haley, so that you can grow stronger," said her friend. Amy paused to think for a moment. "But are you sure this isn't just a simple misunderstanding?" "I really can't imagine that man of yours is interested in another woman," she said. "Well, what?" Haley stumbled over the words. She knew she couldn't tell Amy the real situation and what had really happened, and in the back of her mind she knew that Brad wasn't that kind of man. However, the fact that the beautiful blonde doctor was allowed to see him, but she, his wife, was not, was what hurt the most. "His doctor is really beautiful," she finally said. Amy just smiled brightly and said, "Okay, I know a good way to help you feel better." She disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a glass of beer in each hand. "Here, let's have a drink. After this, you'll feel better," Amy said, and Haley accepted a beer. Amy was actually planning something to punish Haley's husband for making her friend jealous and hurting her like this. And because of all the reports she had heard from Haley about him, Amy could now tell what kind of man he was and just how to throw him off his rhythm. Then Amy remembered that he had asked his wife to teach him how to French kiss, and Amy smiled as she began to hatch a plan. An hour later, after a few glasses of beer, Amy borrowed Haley's phone and sent a message to Brad. "Come and fetch your wife. She's drunk." Only a couple of minutes had passed when there was a knock at the door. Amy opened the door to a gorgeous young man. She smiled seductively at him and looked him up and down. "Oh, Leonard, come over here," Haley called out as soon as she saw him. Leonard's eyes widened in shock when he saw that Haley had been drinking. "Did Brad send you to fetch her?" Amy asked, and he just nodded. "Amy, you better not touch that man. He's not interested in women," Haley said, giggling. And Leonard quietly cried inside. "What? Okay, I get it. Well, you better take her home now. We can't keep her husband waiting, right?" Amy said to Leonard. He nodded before he went over to help Haley onto her feet and support her to the front door. As she walked past, Amy whispered something in her ear. "Don't forget what we talked about, okay? You have to teach him tonight, no matter what. Do you understand?" she asked. "Yes, I understand," Haley mumbled. Episode 127, It Will Only Get Worse. Brad was at Grey Mansion enveloped in darkness, as though he was a completely different person from the soft and fluffy version he had been when they had left Greenport, just after Haley had kissed him. An hour previous, once the doctor had confirmed that Brad was fine, Tyler had immediately told him about Haley and how distressed she had been. When Brad had heard that his wife was hurt and upset, he had immediately walked out to meet her, only to discover her gone. Leo had been waiting outside and told Brad that she had asked Leonard to take her somewhere. He explained to Brad how Haley had seemed and what she had said before they had left, and Brad had become even more concerned. As his anxiety and coldness increased, Leonard had called him to tell him his wife was with her friend. Brad had asked him if she was okay, but Leonard had replied honestly and said that she had looked heartbroken. Brad had gripped the cell phone in his hand as though he wanted to crumple it. Brad had waited in the dark and cold until he finally received a message from Haley's cell phone. "Come and fetch your wife. She's drunk." As soon as he had read the message, he had stood to leave, but Tyler was already standing in the entrance, blocking his way, as though he had anticipated what he was about to do. "You know I can't let you go, Brad," Tyler said, staring at him with a burning intensity, as if he was a guardian from hell, ready to chain him up if necessary to prevent him from leaving the house. At that moment, with just a single glance at Tyler, Brad knew it would be impossible to get past him. "You can wait here for her. I've already told Leonard to bring her home," he continued, while Brad just stood there like a 1,000-year-old frozen statue in front of him. Brad didn't speak for a long time. He stood there unmoving, not just because of what Tyler had said, but because he knew he was right. He knew that if he insisted, something might happen while he was with her, which was the one thing he would never allow. He would never allow his wife to get caught up in the trouble that was chasing him. He had no choice but to wait. Finally, Brad opened his mouth to speak.
"Tyler, can you explain why she was so upset? She has always been fine with the fact that she's not allowed to see my face. What's changed?"
he asked. When he heard Brad's words, the fierce intensity in Tyler's eyes was extinguished instantly. "Your unbelievably low emotional intelligence drives me mad sometimes," Tyler thought in frustration. And even though Tyler understood why Brad was the way he was now, he still couldn't help but feel exasperated every time he asked a question like this. Nevertheless, he prepared to explain the situation with patience. "Well, you really can't blame her if she acts and feels like that, Brad. It's not the fact that you won't allow her to see your face. It's the fact that you allow others to. That hurts her and makes her believe she's not important to you or that you don't trust her," Tyler explained. When he had finished his explanation, his gaze fell on Brad, and he knew that what he had told him troubled him deeply. Tyler released a deep sigh. "This is not supposed to be a major problem, Brad, but because you both develop strong feelings toward each other, I'm afraid it's only going to get worse. I wonder how long you'll last." After a long silence, Brad opened his mouth again.
"And then tell me, what am I supposed to do?"
he asked. Tyler looked at him solemnly as he replied, "You can't do anything about it, Brad. I'm afraid the only option you have is to reveal yourself to her."